please welcome our panelists, Gina Brunier, James Titcomb, Nicolas Grecas, and Kevin Douglas. So for this time, we do not have an introduction by the AFUP staff. So I please, could you introduce you, each of yours, and maybe in one sentence, what PHP represents for you?
Hello, my name is Gina Banyard. I'm a PHP core developer, so I work on the PHP engine. I've been financed by the PHP Foundation since 2022. What PHP represents to me? I think it's the community. It's like the vibe and like what people are, mainly. So, yeah.
Hi, I'm James. I'm from United Kingdom, hence the terribly British accent. So I've been working with PHP like over 20 years or so. And to me, and PHP Foundation for a year and a half? Yes. Something like that. Anyway, I'm working on Pi in case anyone didn't come to my talk. What PHP means to me? Well, it's been a career, but also a huge community. I've made a lot of friends, great people, and it seems to be growing still, which is good. I like it.
Hello, I'm Nicolas. I'm doing PHP since 2001, and I'm involved in the PHP in the core since 2006. That was my first interaction on internals. Then I built Patchwork, my own framework. And then I joined Symfony 10 years ago, about 10 years ago. And so I'm, just getting more and more involved into the community. Today I'm in the board of the foundation and also leading kind of the Symfony project. We'll see. And it's just fun. That's why I'm here.
Hi, my name is Kevin Douglas. I'm working with PHP since almost forever, basically. And I've contributed for the first time to the PHP core something like 10 or even 15 years ago. It was a feature to add support for the domain name validation in PHP. And after that, I worked a lot on Symfony, created API platform, and front-end PHP. And to me, PHP is mostly a tool to get things done quickly and as fast and as good as possible.
Great, thank you. To beginning, PHP is celebrating the 30th anniversary this year. What surprised you or impressed you the most about the evolution of the language, as you have strong experience, most than 10 years, for these 10 years since?
Well, I mean, 30 years is a huge amount of time, right? It's interesting to see how it's evolved and modernized, and we pick things up from other languages, other communities as well. So many cool features have come to light. Some are still being worked on, like generics and things like that. I think that's really kind of the top line for PHP, is that it's a language that has evolved out of necessity. Like someone thinks, oh, it would be cool if PHP did this. And, back from when Rasmus first created the language, it's almost unrecognizable now. But it's evolved with the help of so many people, contributors, people just having ideas and, talking at conferences like this, user groups and so on. So I think it's been a journey over those 30 years, for sure.
Anybody else?
I agree. What's very important for me in this ecosystem is that we are in control of the future and the evolution of PHP. Like, it's very organic, and so that's quite unique for technology. I mean, you know the technologies, big names, there are big companies behind. Here in PHP, we are in control because we can get involved. We just have to jump into some mailing lists, some issue tracker, and what is happening today or these years has been driven by just our needs, and that's also part of why I like being here.
Yeah, I think to jump over from what Nicolas said, it's like I just used PHP for a bit and got involved with it just because I was bored and like wanted to do something with my life while I was out of uni for a year. And it's very, it seems strange and like difficult. It's like, oh, stuff is happening in the background, but it's actually very accessible. It's like anybody can join, anybody can just go on the mailing list. And even if you are, like I was a nobody in the ecosystem like 7 years ago, and it's sometimes a bit strange to see like how I am now here on a panel talking to all of you about it. And it's not to say like it could be you, but it also could be. You could just join the mailing list and start contributing and be part of the community and the core community and drive the evolution of the language. Because many people join, stay for a bit, and then leave. And that's just natural. It's not a big company behind it and directs and imposes things. And I mean, we all have our differences in opinions and where we think the language should go. But in the end of it, it's a consensus between core developers and the internal community, which is composed of basically anybody that just wants to get involved.
Maybe from a more technical point of view, what I quite like in PHP these days is that you can develop very easily things with the dynamic typing system. So you can create prototypes or create small websites very, very quickly without caring at all about strictness and types and things like that. That was the DNA of the language, and it's still possible and still supported. But on top of that, you have now a lot of features about strictness, and especially you can do, even if we don't have generics right now, we have a more strict typing system, and you can use both. And to me, it's one of the key features of the language. You can do the low-level bricks of your applications using a lot of strictness, using the strict features and the strict typing system. And on top of that, you can create very easily and very quickly code for your day-to-day use with the same language. And to me, it's something that is very valuable to have the ability to mix both approaches. And it's you can do something similar to that in TypeScript, but in most languages, it's not possible to do that.
Okay, great. Thank you for this first question. Regarding maybe more the PHP Foundation, can you remember us what is the objective of the PHP Foundation, and maybe a recap of what happened since the creation of the PHP Foundation?
Do you want to take this, Nicolas, or should I do it? Okay, I think, so the PHP Foundation was mainly motivated after Nikita Popov wanted to move on after having contributed for, I think, a solid 10 plus years on PHP, and to focus on LLVM and compilers, stuff that incredibly advanced. And I think it was the peak realization also after an article from Joe Watkins a bit before about the bus factor, in that there were only 2 people that were paid to work on the language. Language which powers millions of websites, millions of livelihoods, and that's quite a scary thought. And I think people saw, okay, this is a problem, we'll take some time, we'll set up something, and Nikita's desire to move on accelerated the creation of the foundation with, I think it's like 8 founding members? Something like that. I mean, it's easy to look it up, but the need and the design and the objective of it is to get funding to pay for developers to maintain the language and evolve it. That's the core objective of it, and I think we have achieved part of this. We are like now 11 people. 3 of us are part-time, 8 of us are, no, 3 of us are full-time, and 8 of us are part-time. that work on the language and on tooling, like James was Pi, or CI/CD, like Windows builds and everything. And a lot of it is bug reviews and like PR reviews and things like that, which allow also the community to contribute more easily to PHP as well.
Great, thank you. Maybe you want to add something? No? Okay. Maybe regarding the framework point of view, could you explain if there are some link or some exchange between the biggest framework that you maintain and contribute and the PHP Foundation?
Yes, of course. So the foundation has been also a great opportunity for, we call that the userland side of PHP, which means us poor PHP developers versus the C1s, right? To take some stronger voice in the ecosystem. And so the board has been created out of also community members. I am representative of Symfony. There is also Niels for Composer. And then if you look at the names, you will see that they are linked to some project that has some impact on the userland side of things. And that's great because that's what we want. We want the language to serve us, people that write in PHP. And my personal experience with that is that it's new. It's not, it wasn't given at the beginning of my involvement into PHP internals. They were more like, we are the C developers, we know how we want the language to evolve. And we were like, yeah, but we are the user of this language, and can we have a say? And they were, yeah, you can, but we can also do what we want. They can still, everybody can. But yeah, there is a stronger link, and that's what is important, the link between those groups.
Yeah, I think it's a bit telling and a bit weird that the people that maintain the language actually write less of the language because it's a completely different implementation. So yeah, sometimes I think it was also what Sarah was saying. She used to do a bunch of PHP, and then she started working on the core, and then she stopped, and then afterwards she did a bit more PHP afterwards for a while, which is quite funny in that the people that maintain the language, yeah, don't necessarily see all of the use cases in userland, yeah.
Yeah, this is happening quite often. Like there are features in PHP, the engine that the developers created, the C ones, and that we are using, but they don't want us to use that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well,
like, oh, who is building something on that? Nobody. And then I say, we built a full component out of that. Okay.
Yeah, that happens a few times.
Okay, great. Regarding the expectation of the community, what do you have about the asking of the evolution of the language for the PHP Foundation? Do you have some feedbacks from the community about that, about the needs? And if yes, what kind of needs they want?
I mean, I think like most of the needs and the discussions actually happens like in person, rather, or like when people bring you ideas on the mailing list. I don't think the foundation necessarily made this more accessible, but I think there is more people that are willing and who can possibly work on a feature or are available to review somebody else's code. I remember when I started, like Nikita was completely overworked, and sometimes it took like 2-3 weeks to just get like an initial review or get something or get help with the engine. And I think now we are way more accessible in that, like, oh, there are people that are paid to work on it and who can share knowledge if you have questions and to allow people to work on it. That I think is the biggest evolution which has happened recently. Is I think I don't remember, like Roman had the statistics, I think at PHPverse, where like when the foundation got created, like most of the commits were from foundation developers. But like now it's like more like 50-50 in that because there are so many more people to review code, it is also so much easier for other people to contribute to it because the knowledge is being spread and shared between newcomers who just want to fix a bug or people who actually want to introduce like a new feature. So I think that's the biggest change regarding to the internals community which the foundation has provided.
I think it's also worth remembering that the PHP Foundation was not made to change the governance of the PHP project and like what goes into it. Those processes, as Nicholas said, they still exist. You know, you still have RFCs. You know, even changes that the PHP Foundation developers want to make, they still have to go through the same process. But the PHP Foundation brings around that sustainability, like reducing that bus factor, and making sure that we do have more developers working on it who have the time to work on it, and obviously paying for that time helps massively, you know, because we've got more people working on it now, more oversight. But it also gives like the wider community like a sounding board for like features like generics, which are obviously difficult to plan out and figure out how these things work. But it means people can get involved with the right people. You know, they can say, oh, I've had an idea about generics, and they can get in touch with the people at the foundation that are, you know, thinking about these things. And it just creates a bit more of an alternative opening, rather than like the mailing list. The internals mailing list, for example, might be a bit scary, might be a bit like, old-fashioned or whatever. Someone might not want to post to it because historically, you know, there's been lots of drama on these lists and things like that. Haven't seen quite so much drama recently, which is nice. But it's, you know, I think it just opens those doors more, and I think that's great for the community.
To give some examples about that, when I started working on front-end PHP, it was mostly working, but only mostly, because it's quite hard to have a PHP running in the same process as the Go runtime for technical low-level reasons. And I quickly managed to identify the problems and provide patches, but that were patches used basically only for my side project. And that were very, very hard to figure out. The only thing on my side was that Python was doing the same work for the same reason, but it was a Google team working on Python and a Google team working on the Go runtime. I just asked on the PHP Foundation Slack for help to get the patch merged and reviewed and merged, and Arnaud Leblanc especially did a great job at reviewing and improving the patches in the early times of front-end PHP. And without the foundation and without Arnaud, these patches that were not a priority wouldn't have been merged, and front-end PHP wouldn't be as stable and mature as it is today. And it has been unlocked by the foundation and the fact that there are people paid to review the code and to discuss with the community and to support emerging projects like front-end PHP.
And we are talking about paid people, but what is interesting is that there is no roadmap, let's say, for PHP, which means that they work on what they want, and that's great. It's not like, hey, you're paid by the foundation, like you might be, in your company, you might be having like projects and deadlines and etc. The people paid by the foundation are just here, driven by passion, and they get caught by some topic, they work on that, and then it happens. Sometimes it's experimental, it dies. And it means also we have like brain power available us as on PHP community members. Like Kevin said, that's one example. I know many more where there were teams like me, for example, and Arnaud again. I drafted using English what lazy objects should be, and he made the C part. And that's been incredibly productive. And another example, there are more. And this is a new way of working in making progress in the community. And that's awesome. I mean, really, it has a big impact. And conferences like today are also a great, great opportunity for us to speak together. And I know I've like 10 new notes in my to-do list of things I need to investigate. And some of them are maybe for Gina or maybe for, you know, like a big wheel.
Yeah, I think this is definitely like happening where I think there's also before it always was like, oh, okay, you can propose an IFC, but do you have an implementation? And I think it's good that like other people also, it's not necessarily just us, it's like we also have access to other people who are maybe a bit better with technical writing, who enjoy doing technical writing. I'm very bad at it, I don't like it. But that are able to exchange and like produce more polished IFCs, which are clearer, which like focus on the intent more. But also is, I think, yeah, like just to exchange more ideas from, I mean, people that actually use the language on a day-to-day basis, and being like, oh, I have this use case, and sometimes what happens is like, you know, you come to me and it's like, okay, like I see what you mean, but I don't think this is how it should be done. And then it comes as like, okay, does this other alternative way of doing, would this also solve your problem, which works nicer? But these are only conversations which can happen like with multiple people. It's like, I mean, we can always invent something and then try, but like, yeah, if it doesn't work or if it's clunky, it's not ideal, really.
Great. If we are regarding some point of view about the job market, how do you see the evolution and maybe the future about the job market for the PHP developer, because they are the user of the framework that you produce, of the language? How do you see some trends or some difference of, yeah, maybe Kevin?
I think that the Laravel ecosystem is pushing the ecosystem forward on this topic, because Laravel is one of the most used framework in all ecosystems. It has more stars than Ruby on Rails. It is one of the most used framework, and one of the benefits of Laravel is that many developers who aren't PHP developers are learning PHP to learn Laravel and its ecosystem. And it's nice for the language because it means more jobs, more developers, more money. So on this topic, it's very interesting to have a big player like Laravel. Some years ago, I would have said, okay, there are still a lot of COBOL developers, so the job market for PHP is everywhere, and so we will always need PHP developers. But now, thanks to Symfony, of course, but especially to the hype behind Laravel, I think that there are many newcomers, many new developers that are learning PHP, and that's quite good for the ecosystem.
I mean, I think it's not really on the developer market. I mean, it's weird because you talk to people, and I think 2 years ago, like after COVID, it was quite difficult because a lot of companies were not sure how things would work and where they could do and everything. But it feels as well in the last 1-2 years, especially, the image around PHP has vastly improved. I see way more people being positive about it. I see way more people coming back to the language after 15 years and being surprised. It's like, oh, this is what modern PHP looks like. Oh, this is what you can do. It's like, you can just do so many things and it's so easy. And it's in some ways like, oh, but even if I don't want to have all of this complexity, I can still write code as if it was 2005. And it's very nice. And I think it's also just, yeah, giving more confidence in companies and in developers in general to be like, okay, PHP is a reliable technology. It's a technology that is going to be there and is going to stay for like, I mean, who knows how long, but at least another like 15 years, I would say, like at least.
Yeah, and what I understand is also how it's easy to start and to develop around the framework that you produce of the language. Maybe can you share or explain us what do you do on the framework point of view to increase the developer experience and to have an easy access to the framework here?
At Letiel.coop, the company I work for, we are working for a lot of customers with PHP. And so most of the open source projects that we created or contribute to, including API platforms, Symfony and frontend PHP, are driven by the needs of our customers. And our goal is quite easy, is to be able to produce quality projects as quickly as possible. And so everything we contributed, or most of the things we contributed to Symfony, the whole design of API platform, and the key idea behind frontend PHP is to be able to do that, to do very stable projects for real business use cases as fast as possible. And so I think that both API platform, Symfony, Laravel, and now frontend PHP has something that is that you cannot find in other ecosystems. The ability to use tools to create things very, very, very quickly, but you can always go one level deeper to do very advanced things. For instance, with frontend PHP, you can use WordPress to do a small e-commerce website very easily. And if you have some advanced needs for a small part of the project, or because the company is growing, then you can just hook some Go code to do some advanced things only for the part of the project where you need it. And I think that it's the key feature for the developer experience of PHP. You can develop very, very fastly, very, very quickly, but you can always do very advanced things in the same project with the same code base.
I was just going to say something that I think we've recently discussed in PHP Foundation work is the onboarding process of frameworks like Laravel and Symfony. They've gone to great lengths to make onboarding as easy as possible. So like you run this command and do this thing, and then you have your framework up and running, and you can do your thing, right? We looked at the PHP downloads page, and it was not very user-friendly and onboarding friendly. That's now been overhauled, and is the downloads page is now much cooler. We've taken a leaf out of those books, and I think that's great. We've got a lot to learn. I think a lot to improve still, and those discussions keep happening in the PHP Foundation meetings, and we're like, oh yeah, we can do better on these things, and learn from the frameworks who are clearly leading the field here. So, yeah.
One thing that I've learned also by contributing to Symfony or being in the ecosystem is that we are able kind of to reinvent ourselves. I mean, you didn't talk about Pi, but yeah, you talked about Pi. Pi is like a new way of compiling extension, shipping extension, installing them. They used to be peer, and I know this was around before I entered PHP. And it's bold, reinventing that. And that's one example in the PHP ecosystem. Kevin today these days is proposing us to reinvent the way we host applications, PHP applications. In Symfony, Flex, for example, were the big bang in the way we structured our applications. And I think it's very important to not be afraid of doing those big bangs, because that's where there can be like innovation and simplifications and really change for the better.
Yeah, and maybe that's it for the developer experience and the access. Maybe Gina, you want to add something about the documentation and the easy access to the documentation?
I mean, yeah, I think the PHP documentation, I mean, I still find it to be one of the best formats, like having a single page for for one function. I remember when I was doing my master's degree, needing to do some Python or MATLAB, and you have one page with all of the functions, no examples, no idea. Like you keyword searching with Alt F and trying to find, okay, is this maybe? And that's not exactly what you want, and you don't even have recommendations of what other functions or methods could be. I mean, obviously, the documentation can always be improved and can be better. I think one of the recent improvements that got made is that a lot of the examples are now actually executable on the website, so you can actually see without needing to install and compile PHP that, okay, what happens, and you can edit it. I know they're not all enabled because most of the examples weren't written with this in mind to be executed and run, so it takes a bit of effort that all of you can contribute. I think there's like one of these issues which is pinned, or if not, it might have been unpinned recently for the bug tracker for documenting 8.5, or there's still things for 8.4 to document. But I think it's, yeah, like the doc is now on GitHub. It's very easy to submit PRs. If you find a typo, just submit a fix. Because it is, yeah, all of the community, and also, I mean, the foundation like allows me to work on some documentation tooling, mainly because I didn't want to be writing the migration guide by hand for the 4th time, which is very exhausting. And on top of that, we would miss things because we would rely on people to complete everything. And I think just improving tooling for the project is something that the foundation allows, that helps everybody, not just us core developers, but also you, the end user, at the end of the day.
Yeah, thanks. Regarding some aspect of the product that we developed with PHP of our framework, we have to deal with some maybe high volume of data, security aspect, performance stuff. How do you imagine the future of the evolution about frameworks, of piece of the framework of the language around these topics?
I mean, I guess I'll start quickly on the language side. I think I had this multiple times where people are quite surprised how fast PHP is already. Like, PHP is one of the fastest interpreted languages out there. The only one which is quicker is JavaScript, and they have Google working on V8. So it's quite impressive that like a very small team is able to keep up with like a massive company. I had another idea, and like my thought left. Nicolas, go, or Kevin. It'll come back. It'll come back.
I think frameworks have a key role for that, because frameworks like Symfony and Laravel are actually already integrating a lot of technologies that you can easily use together. For instance, when you are using Symfony and Laravel, they both provide a way to create rich user interfaces using JavaScript under the hood, but you only write PHP. It's a Livewire with Laravel and Symfony UX with Symfony. And with, let's say, you have some kind of PHP API, allowing to integrate external tools. In my opinion, it's not a good idea to rewrite everything in PHP, because it's wasting time with Docker and containerization, and there are a lot of ways, and microservices and APIs. We have easy ways to package technologies that are different, but that can work together very easily. For instance, in Symfony, you have a lot of components that are just shared API that will use adapters for a lot of open source or software as a service providers. So you can send a mail, send a real-time notification, use a queue system very easily in PHP, and under the hood, it's using something written in another language. And in my opinion, it's the future of PHP is that you will use high-level tools like Symfony or Laravel that will provide you a nice API written in PHP to build complex applications that will delegate to other programming languages under the hood.
I've remembered my point, which is good. But like I've had it multiple times where like people would tell me their experiences. They would would work in a company, or it would get merged, and they would join a product, and they would have like part of the company that would write a whole application in Java, and they would be so surprised how much more throughput one tiny PHP server would get, and so many more clients it could serve compared to the whole massive, big, complicated Java project. And I think performance is not the be and end all of a programming language. I think for certain tasks, PHP is definitely not suited. I mean, we're not going to be doing system programming and I don't know, financial hyper trading in PHP. That would be surprising. But many things are already written in PHP, and a lot of the world runs on PHP. I mean, I think DNS in certain countries a lot of tools are written in PHP. Whole countries, they have whole ecosystems which are written in PHP. I think one very fun one which I've learned, or I've relearned recently, was initially all of the telecommunications things in Spain were written in PHP. So somebody wrote, after a few years, wrote a PHP VM in Erlang, because they didn't want to break all of the APIs for everybody else, but just to have something a bit more reliable and for the fail-safe. But PHP is such a versatile language that exists in so many areas that you don't even think about. And it is so present in the ecosystem, and that performance is one characteristic for why you would choose a language. But if you don't need the best performance, PHP can do a lot.
I think it's also important to remember, before PHP, well, back in the PHP 5 days, performance wasn't really high on everyone's radar, except for this one little company, Facebook, because they ran everything on PHP, and they were like, okay, well, we can save a load of money by making PHP faster. So that's how HHVM came to be. And whilst I imagine they probably still use it, I don't really know, but the effect of that actually drove the performance in PHP 7 up massively, because a load of people started looking at, oh yeah, we can save some time this way, we can change this zval struct to make it faster and more memory efficient and all this kind of stuff. So I think that brought performance, not necessarily the highest priority, but I think everyone had a net benefit from that, because, well, everyone's server costs are now reduced. And I think Facebook spurring that on with their HHVM, it was a net positive contribution. Now I think people make smaller and smaller improvements, because you can only get so far anyway, before you start making things unstable, because you optimize out important stuff that should be running, So yeah, it's getting faster. I don't think it will get much faster, but yeah, it's good.
Yeah. Great. We are in 2025. I can't imagine this panelist without speaking about IA, of course. What do you imagine the PHP to interact with IA stuff regarding some bundles who are emerging on some framework? Maybe, how can the language or the framework can interact with tools like AI tools? And maybe on contribution perspective, do you think that AI tools can increase the easy access about maybe more documentation, more translation documentation, easily to contribute maybe also? Yeah, around these two stuff, do you have some discussion about that?
AI is a very difficult topic to anticipate. It evolves so fast. We've learned, so we are reading about the exponential growth of technology. Exponential is very hard for the brain to grasp. So people 1 year ago were saying, oh, I don't believe in AI because they're not able today to do that. And then 3 months after, they were able to do that thing. And so it means it's very difficult. Yeah, we cannot know what it's going to do. So Symfony AI is an initiative that bundles, packages, abstracts the way we interact with AIs currently. So agents, tooling, vector stores, stuff like that, bundles, of course, to make it easy to integrate into Symfony, but that's also for other technologies, frameworks. It's not labeled as stable yet. People, companies are still looking for something useful to do with AI. I don't know if you have AI in production serving clients, but there are few use cases that really, really do work. Everybody is experimenting. So the field is super wide. Another idea that came to me is about, like I was talking with some of you yesterday, and they were like, hey, I asked the AI to do this stuff, and they did it using raw PHP. So as a Symfony user, I'm like, or maybe a contributor, I'm like, does this mean we won't need Symfony in the future? But then we can go to the next level. Maybe at some point the AI will decide to use C to do what we do today. So it goes down to assembly. So that's the driving or feeding the reflection on this topic. And then another thing, I've been listening to the presentation of the Shift project like last week. You know, the Shift project is this French association by Jean-Marc Jancovici, who is working on the ecological transition, trying to figure out numbers about what is happening on Earth, our planet. And so they are telling us, the focus was on data centers, and the data centers we are building to power those AI, GPUs, etc. And this works because we are feeding them with energy. And the energy comes from petrol, nuclear power, and because those data centers grow faster than what the power provider can do, it means the US is doing that, turning on again coal power plants, gas power plants. It's a bit scary, don't you think? And the link I make between those topics, like we might not need Symfony, and there's more energy there, is at some point I think we have a responsibility of caring about the energy that our AI requests trigger. Like when we get out of a room, we turn off the lights. And are we going to ask an AI to reinvent Symfony without using Symfony for every single problem we have? I think there is something we need to fight for. Like, please, AI, do use Symfony or pre-solved problem instead of reinventing everything at every single AI request, which means boiling the ocean and getting more oil out of Earth. Sorry, that was a long monologue.
I mean, I think it's also, jumping off of that point, I think like last week or 2 weeks ago, the Financial Times released, did a survey of executives and everything and asked them, it's like, do you have AI or do you plan having AI in your product? And 90% of them said yes, 10% of them said no. And then asked the follow-up questions like, do you have any idea or where would you integrate AI? 90% of said them, I have no idea, no. And 10% of them said yes. So, it's, okay, we want AI, but we don't know for what. But I think it's also like AI and machine learning is such a vast field. I don't think the future is in LLMs. I don't think it's so energy inefficient. It uses so many resources. And the improvements, they might be, and we don't know where they are, if they're going to be incremental, if they're going to still grow, or if they're going to plateau. We don't know what the growth is. But I think it's just at one point there needs to be a discussion and a realization that how much are these tools benefiting me in the current moment versus how much it costs all of us. So yeah, that's just my take on that.
Great, thank you. For another topic that we have on the PHP ecosystem is maybe the time to live of PHP, and without joke, and maybe not only for PHP, do you see an extreme scenario where the language or some language could disappear on the ecosystem in maybe 10, 20 years?
I mean, I think you already see various, even just within PHP, I mean, I think who remembers Zen framework? Like, yeah, plenty of people. I think things sometimes like appear and then other people come over and evolve. I mean, even now, I think like the PHP ecosystem is a bit more dynamic. You see a few new frameworks like Tempest, to name one, but it's getting a bit more dynamic. And I think it's a natural evolution of we take lessons, we learn about something, and then we do something new with it. And I mean, even today, people invent new programming languages, new programming language paradigms. I mean, recently, like I was in Scotland for like a summer school, and I've learned for the first time about choreographic programming, to do concurrent programming more safer, more easily without bugs. And that a programming language might die? Yeah, definitely. I mean, who still does Algo 64 or 68? Like, there's a natural evolution, but it's either you evolve with it or somebody takes your spot by being groundbreaking in a new way, but either by making it easier because it's more abstract and like solves more problem inherently, or because it just does things faster and better. I mean, that was the threat with HHVM at one point. Was HHVM going to take over PHP? And then, PHP evolved and got faster and, had a small revolution in itself. And in some way, like, PHP is still there. And, yeah, HHVM exists. Facebook still uses it. But they're like basically one out of two companies, Slack being the other one. So
I think, like, with regards to PHP itself, it's used so widely that even if there was a time, and I don't think that time is any time soon, like Gina said, maybe 15 years, maybe longer, I don't know. But there are so many sites, applications, tools that are built using PHP. They're going to need to be maintained for a long time. So even if the highs just gradually go down after time, maybe, but like there's so much built using PHP that that is such a long distant future that I can't even imagine. It may happen, but you hear of sites or like applications and so on. Oh, let's rewrite that in TypeScript. I hear that so much, and I'm like, well, why? What do you benefit from it? And sometimes it goes ahead. Sometimes they're like, oh yeah, maybe we don't just need to rewrite things using new languages or tools or whatever all the time. You can just continue to maintain what you have. So I think one of the keys for ensuring that high is as long as possible is making sure that we are attracting new developers and new projects to be built with PHP. So I think that's the focus, to stop anything like that happening. And so things like onboarding to languages, frameworks, and so on, and making that easy, and like the little change that we did on the downloads page recently, that's a positive, because that tells you this is how you run PHP on your system. Like, do this thing. It makes it really easy. So reducing that friction, getting younger people on board as well. There's, I don't know what, the distribution of languages that are taught at universities and things is. I'm a bit old for university now, but I think if we can lobby universities, for example, to teach PHP and say, hey, build a site in PHP, that I think is a positive thing we could do.
Oh, okay.
What matters, I think, also is that's on the same idea also, but it's so. Why do religion die? That's because everybody forgot about it. And that's the same for us. I mean, as long as there are people in this room at PHP conferences, at Symfony conferences, we need to keep the attention, and that's how we are going to continue existing in the future.
And as long as the tool is useful. And as of today, in my opinion, PHP is still one of the languages where you can get the things done as easy and as quickly as possible. And as long as the language will enable to be so productive, there will be new projects using it, and there will be projects to maintain. So.
Great. So on the opposite side, in 10 years, how do you imagine PHP look like? Maybe all the ecosystem and the frameworks.
Maybe it's got generics by then.
Yeah, I think it's quite difficult to project yourself. I mean, I think even if you asked like 6, 7 years ago, where did you think PHP would look like? Would you have expected property hooks, like asymmetric visibility, lazy objects? I think it's sometimes hard to realize and to imagine what you don't need or what you don't have. And it's even harder to project into the future to be like, how will it be? Because the language has everything I need, right? Like, what would I need more in it? And I think, yeah, it's like more people using it, more use cases that will, and yeah, anybody, yeah, just has an idea and wants something that will just add it into the language. Maybe PHP will do more functional programming, you know, maybe PHP will have completely different ideas or, you know, effects and, I don't know, like distributed systems, like when you press, like you run a command, like a tool to generate, and you have like, you can now deploy stuff on multiple servers and that they talk to each other. Who the hell knows? It's very hard to imagine where PHP will be. Like, it can go in so many ways, but which timeline do we get into? I don't know. I just hope in 10 years I'm still here. That's what I hope.
And I think answering that question specifically is difficult because of, you know, what we said earlier. PHP has just evolved out of necessity. You know, as you say, someone thinks, oh, that might be a cool feature. And, you know, no one, you know, maybe someone had thought of it, but it only comes to fruition because someone went ahead and did that thing. So 10 years of evolution could be anything. It could be exactly the same as today. It could be vastly different. You know, maybe Franken PHP becomes like merged into PHP itself or something, and there is one PHP server in the world, and it's run by an AI overlord. I don't know. Who knows?
Sorry. We have 5 minutes, so maybe we can take 1 or 2 questions from the audience, if there are.
Hello guys, thank you. 15 years ago, I've witnessed a lot of code base moving out from something else to PHP. It was not so common, but it was real. I mean, a company using Java moving to PHP for XYZ reason. Right now, even if the language is way more better than 10 years or 15 years ago, I don't see that kind of move of company leaving Ruby on Rails to use PHP. Did you witness this kind of move, or PHP is still a language to start a company and not to be implemented in existing companies?
I think like part of that is an image problem, right? Everyone's like, oh, you still use PHP, what? And that part of it is an image problem. The other part, I think, is like you say, building new projects with PHP. And I think frameworks like Laravel, Symfony, even WordPress, Drupal, and all them, you know, CMSs, things like that, that helps drive adoption to the language. So, you know, that I think obviously we're all jointly responsible for trying to make sure that happens. But certainly an image improvement, you know, writing about PHP, like blog posts about PHP in a positive light, and showcasing what PHP can do now that it couldn't do 15 years ago, I think that helps, because then if you, if a company's looking to start a new project and their devs say, oh, have you seen what PHP can do now? Check out this blog post. It's that additional resource to drive adoption into the language.
Yeah, I think it's quite strange, because when I go to conferences, I like talking to people and know what they do in PHP. And yeah, you always hear websites, and even then you do cool websites, but most companies don't advertise that they use PHP because it's not hype. I think you can also do that, or if your company has like a tech blog, and some of you like writing, how about writing what you do currently, or what problem you recently solved at the company using PHP? I know when I was in Japan speaking with at a user group there, they have a whole ecosystem where they write all of their game servers in PHP. They have integrations with PHP and Unity, and it's completely mind-boggling, because you wouldn't expect some of your the most used video games, online video games, having all of their matchmaking done in PHP, spinning up servers in PHP. I think I don't remember if it was last year or 2 years ago, where there was a conference about somebody working for the French Education Ministry of using PHP to spin up I don't know how many instances of Big Blue Button and everything. It's just you can all talk about what your company does, which also gives the confidence for other companies to see oh, you can do this with PHP, or we have this problem and we didn't think PHP could do this, and this is a nice solution. It is a lot of advocacy from all of us to make the image of PHP better.
And then I'm also wondering about where your opinion on this idea comes from. We all live in a bubble, that's what I mean. And so we don't know the truth. I have another thing that is coming to my ear at Sensio Labs. They are winning against Java more and more. So they are answering to public calls, I don't know the name.
Public offerings.
Public offerings, and we win. We propose PHP, they have the Java, and they win since always. And now, not always. So that's something else.
I think there is a new hype with PHP, and we have seen some well-known companies like Phasm Analytics moved from Go to PHP because it was easier and more cost-effective. So there are something that is changing, and PHP is new again and is hype again. So I think it's as I was saying previously, mostly because of the Laravel hype, because, for instance, this company is switching to Laravel, but it's benefiting the whole ecosystem. In my company, we have teams working with many different programming languages, including Go, JavaScript, Python. And what we are seeing is more there are an economic crisis ongoing in the tech ecosystem, and PHP is cheap. It's cheap and effective. And so we are getting more and more new projects where most of the projects will be done in PHP because it's cheap and efficient. But some parts of the project, using things like front-end PHP or architectures like microservices, will be done in a, let's say, more specialized programming language like Go or Python for things, for AI things and things like that. So I think that there is new projects and existing projects migrating to PHP, especially because it's efficient.
Great, thank you. It's time for us. Thanks, Gina, James, Nicolas, and Kevin. And thanks. We have a short break before the next session in 10 minutes, I think.